Welcome to Maker's Masterclass, good people. Maker's Masterclasses are designed to help you strengthen your skills in key areas of leadership. And over the next hour, we will embark on a journey that equips you with practical knowledge, actionable strategies, and a fresh perspective on how to set and achieve your goals. And we believe you will leave with a renewed sense of self and invaluable guidance to conquer any situations that may come your way. Enjoy!
I'm Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action, and welcome to my Maker's Masterclass, Igniting Your Fire, inspired by my new book, Fired Up, How to Turn Your Spark into a Flame and Come Alive at Any Age. I wrote Fired Up because everywhere I go, people ask me the same question. How did you, a mom with no formal background in politics or activism, start one of the largest grassroots organizations in the nation? It is a fair question. I'm an introvert who has struggled with severe ADHD and a debilitating fear of public speaking. I knew little to nothing about politics, organizing, or gun violence when I started Moms Demand Action in 2012. Now, this is not exactly the description of someone people would point to and say, that person over there, she should take on the most powerful, wealthy special interest that's ever existed. And yet, that is exactly what happened. Despite a myriad of imperfections and a lack of preparedness, I stepped up. In the face of obstacles that seemed insurmountable, some constructed over a lifetime, others built by society, I persevered. In spite of my fear of public speaking and stepping into the spotlight, I summoned the courage to put myself out into the world. The result, I led an army of fed-up Americans into battle against the gun lobby for over a decade. And together, shoulder to shoulder with other volunteers, we passed over 500 gun safety laws. We stopped the gun industry's agenda in state houses over 90% of the time. We elected thousands of candidates who supported gun sense reform to office, including our own volunteers. And we passed the first federal gun safety legislation in a generation. Turns out this neurodiverse, middle-aged mom from the Midwest was exactly the right person for the job. Now, the second question I constantly get from my friends and my community is, what can I do? Whether people feel powerless against the current political landscape or they just feel lost, they don't know where to begin. They want to live the life they actually want and not the life that is expected of them. And I think what they're really asking me is for a roadmap for a deeper, more authentic, more exhilarating life. And I realized I knew the answer to that question because I'd gained political experience and consider myself an activist, but also the journey that I went on with hundreds of thousands of volunteers because of Moms Demand Action. We all discovered what made us come alive. And together we learned to live on fire. So what is living on fire? It's the answer to what you can and should do if you feel hopeless because of the state of the world. If you feel stuck in a career or a relationship, or if you just have the sense in your gut that there is more for you out there. Living on fire is the metaphor I use to talk about personal transformation. And I don't mean the kind of transformation that will make you more youthful or famous or wealthy. I'm talking about an internal shift that helps you see two things more clearly. What is limiting you and what is calling you? And living on fire allows you to put your desires, your values, your skills at the very center of your life. And that is a radical act for most women. But not only will this improve your life, it will also impact your family, your friends, your community for the better. So today I want to talk to you about how to ignite a fire in your life. Clearly, I wasn't able to start Moms Demand Action because I'm extraordinary. I was able to start it because I followed a very specific fire formula, and we'll discuss that in detail. But the knowledge that I want to empower you with today, I want you to understand that it's a myth, that some people have a spark and some people don't. Fires differ from one person to another. For some, starting a fire might mean being more open to new experiences and new relationships. For others, it could mean bringing a new energy or more intensity to the things you're already doing. For others still, it could mean deciding to pause, to slow down, to consciously do less than you were doing before. Regardless of what your fire might be, I promise you, you already have all the elements necessary to ignite that flame and to transform your life. It's really just a matter of learning the how. So the first thing you need to do is acknowledge what your fire is not. Your fire is not purpose, it's not achievement, and it's not happiness. Before you ignite a fire in your life, you have to understand that our society is designed to keep women small and really divorced from our own desires. Society saddles us with all the ways a woman should be. We should be selfless. We should be nice. We should be grateful. And we buy into these shoulds because we want to be good daughters, wives, mothers. But society teaches us that we have to do good in order to live a great life, right? But as leaders and makers, I know you're comfortable pushing past those boundaries and those expectations. I imagine many of you have had to embrace being called bossy, or you've had to deal with unfair criticism about the balance in your work and family life in order to reach great heights in your career. And that is a vital skill for igniting your fire. But I find that even women with the toughest resolve struggle to utilize these skills when it comes to pursuing something that they want simply because they want it. So we do what's easier. We chase purpose, achievement, happiness, busyness, because those are the goals that society values. And I call these false fires. And too often, society tricks women into believing we're living on fire when, in fact, we're just living by the rules of the system that was specifically designed to keep our desires in check. And that leads to anxiety, isolation, exhaustion, the very opposite of aliveness. In order to find your fire, you have to understand what your fire is not. You have to recognize, unlearn, even resist the things women most often mistake for their fire. And that's because society has led us to believe that these things like purpose, happiness, and achievement will fulfill our souls, when really they keep us stuck on a hamster wheel. So let's break these false fires down. The first false fire is purpose. From a very young age, we are all taught that finding our purpose is the key to a fulfilling life. No pressure, but that idea of finding your one true purpose, it is an immense task. And for most people, it is impossible. For some, purpose is loaded with familial and cultural expectations that push an individual's desires to the sidelines. For others, there might be many purposes throughout life, right? And so this idea of finding the single purpose that will unite them all is really a fool's errand, and it will lead to that purpose anxiety and disappointment that I mentioned. Another false fire is happiness. Happiness is an emotion. It is not a direction. It is very fleeting, and it is often unpredictable. And so when you make happiness your goal, you kind of ironically set yourself up for dissatisfaction. And it can make you fall back on chasing these quick sources or jolts of happiness that will end up leaving you unfulfilled later on. And then achievement is really the final false fire. And I think it's one of the trickiest. If there's one thing Americans love, it is success. If we don't stand to make money or build status or receive praise, we decide that venture is not worth it. When we chase achievement instead of aligning our desires and values, we really risk losing ourselves and what we truly burn for. So your fire is none of these things, but it is the thing that you want simply because you want it. It will not be strategic, it may not even be impressive, but it will call you, and therefore it will be worthwhile because it will take you deeper into yourself and help you uncover a more you. So when you think, what will my fire be? You're not asking what will make me look good, be impressive, achieve success. You're really asking what will make you feel most alive. And by identifying what makes you come alive, that will be easier said than done. Thankfully, I do have good news. There is a formula you can follow to unleash those dormant desires and ignite your fire. Uncovering those things might feel like a daunting task. Many of us, too many of us, are living a life on autopilot. We feel disconnected from our own desires. Women in particular have a million reasons at the ready of why we're not living on fire. I'm not worthy. I'm too busy. I might fail. I don't know what I want. The good news is that you don't need to wait for a divine epiphany to ignite your fire. After my own journey, which included founding and leading Moms Demand Action, where I helped thousands of other women transform their feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness into feeling fired up in every aspect of their lives, I came to realize there's a formula that everyone can follow. And that is a formula that will help you learn how to live from the inside out and not the outside in. And the formula is based on the 3 elements of the fire triangle, something you might have learned about in science in the 8th grade. It represents the elements that are required to bring a fire to life. We know what those are, right? Heat, oxygen, and fuel. For your personal fire, those elements are your desires, your values, and your abilities. So let's break those down. Your desires are the heat that activate your fire triangle. It's really the most powerful element among the 3. Think of your desires as your deepest longings, the parts of you that yearn to be seen, to make an impact, to be shared with the world. And these are the longings that you want to act on. So after the Sandy Hook school shooting, I had a desire for a safer world free of gun violence. And really that ignited a white hot rage inside me that was so strong, I had no choice but to take action. For other fire starters, and those are people who simply decide to prioritize their desires over their obligations, that desire shows up in the form of intuition. Like a woman I interviewed for the book named Susan Piver, who had this unmistakable gut instinct to quit her job and move across the country. And she ended up going on adventures she never imagined. It could be strength, like Gretchen Carlson, who I also interviewed for the book, and she just felt this strong fire in her belly that urged her to stand up for herself throughout her life. In your fire triangle, your values, so we talked about desires, now we're talking about values, that's the oxygen that feeds your desires. So those are personal beliefs and principles that define your priorities, your decisions, and your actions. Your values are how you determine what is truly important to you in life. There are so many values that can ground your desires and meaning. For all of the fire starters I feature in my book, a few of the most common included community, integrity, learning, empathy, courage. There are so many different values. If you Google them, you will see there are hundreds, if not thousands, of personal values. So it's important to know what yours are. And then the third part of your fire triangle is really your abilities. And this is the element that fuels your desires. Your abilities are your unique mental or physical gifts, talents, and skills. They can be innate, they can be acquired, but ultimately they set you apart from everyone else. Many of us struggle to identify our skills, even when those talents are very obvious to other people. I think this is especially true for women because our abilities are often disregarded or undervalued. But skills like communication, connecting, optimism, perseverance, those are vital abilities to help you grow your fire. And so when you combine these 3 elements in just the right way, your desires, your abilities, your values, just like in the fire triangle in nature, you can ignite a fire in your own life. And this really is the sweet spot where what you long for is aligned with the values that ground and guide you, along with your gifts, talents, and skills. I think of it as alchemy. It can feel like magic. It is a very profound and transcendent force. And when I came into alignment with my fire, it did feel very much like touching the divine, working shoulder to shoulder with other women on gun safety activism. The reality is many of us struggle to face the ability to make space for our fires, right? That we need that space. And so you will have to clear away some of the existing responsibilities and obligations in your life. I call this a controlled burn, and they're intentional, right? When you start building your fire, when you're, again, honing your desires, skills, and abilities, you're going to come up against people and systems and patterns that are inhospitable to your fire. Like me, you might try to fight these forces for a while. You might try to keep the status quo intact while you nurture your fire, but eventually you will come to realize that if you want your fire to burn and to burn bright, you will have to clear some space in your life. And so this is when a controlled burn is necessary. If you think about it, since time immemorial, these controlled burns have been considered a medicine. They actually help preserve and maintain the ecosystem by lessening the risk of wildfires. And this same principle of fire management is as true for your life as it is for the earth. I think of controlled burns as a way to audit all the demands on your time, your energy, your attention, to decide what to do less of, what to do more of, and what to get rid of altogether. That could be as big as ending a relationship. It could be stepping away from a job, reassessing how you parent, or as small as giving up a volunteer role that's taking up too much of your time, or changing how you consume television or social media. I personally have conducted many big and small controlled burns throughout my life, from deciding to get a divorce in my first marriage to limiting my news intake in the last few months. And each time I have come out stronger on the other side and really clearer about my own intentions. So think of controlled burns as practices of self-care that will clear the debris in your life and create space for you to really unearth the version of yourself that is more authentic to who you truly are. There are also ways, though, to reform yourself into something more powerful. It's a way to remove things from your life that no longer serve you, and ultimately to set boundaries that will preserve your energy for all of the things you really desire and want to do. Now, enforcing these boundaries will take practice. You will have to call on your experience as a leader to communicate and to hold these boundaries. But, and you can take it from me, even if you're comfortable setting boundaries and making tough decisions, at work, for example, or in your home, doing the same thing to protect and preserve your fire will feel 1,000 times harder because it is more personal and a more emotionally charged pursuit. So I want to give you a few ways to make this process a little easier. First of all, give space to your emotions. When you let go of anything, it could be a relationship or even an old pair of jeans, it will stir up emotions. So as you're working through that controlled burn, be sure to give yourself space for those feelings, especially if this is a big controlled burn like ending a relationship or changing the way you interact with family. And before you embark on a controlled burn, name all of the things that you're releasing and acknowledge what you'll gain by clearing that space in your life. And then you can make a plan for how you will care for yourself as these feelings arise. Can you treat yourself to a fun outing? Can you spend a morning journaling? Can you get together with friends you can call on for emotional support? Next, communicate clearly. An effective controlled burn requires very clear communication because when you decide to set a boundary with someone, for example, you're ending a relationship, you have to be direct and honest about your needs. You can fall back on the I statements that you may have heard about, that you focus on your feelings and desires. And that way it feels like you're not accusing someone of something. It's also a great time to lean in on the values that you've identified because just as values add meaning to your desires, they really bring weight and attention and remind you of why you've made all the choices that you've made. The next thing to remember is that you should practice this with patience. When you enforce the boundaries that come with a controlled burn, it will be a practice or a discipline. And over time, you'll find that you can hold all these boundaries more competently and really that you have a stronger connection to your own wants and needs because that is ultimately the point of a controlled burn. You're not conducting a controlled burn to shut people out, but to ensure that your needs are met and that you have the space to grow into the very best version of yourself. So as you conduct this controlled burn and hold the boundaries around your fire, you're going to encounter blowback, and this is inevitable. Any woman who lives on fire will face blowback. This criticism could feel like an over-exaggerated or extreme response to your actions, right? That's not surprising. In fact, there is research that shows women are more likely to receive feedback on their style, not their substance. Why? because the world is uncomfortable with women who go up against the status quo. So it can really be difficult to not let this blowback extinguish your fire. I interviewed over 70 fire starters from my book, and I realized that the strength of someone's fire was directly related to their ability to endure, even thrive through blowback. Those who could manage the criticism best reminded themselves that living on fire would require them to endure this blowback, which is really predictable and not personal. And they learned to see that criticism not as proof of their deepest concerns or fears, but as proof that they were truly pursuing what they wanted or living on fire. And this is a mindset shift that really helped me. I experienced constant criticism while leading Moms Demand Action. I expected as much from people with opposing views, but the criticism from people close to me is probably what hurt the most. And that blowback felt sometimes like a dangerous affirmation of my deepest worries. Was I putting myself selfishly ahead of my family? Was I going to regret being away from my kids by traveling on the road for Moms Demand Action? And each time I felt that blowback, I reminded myself that the criticism was really more about society than it was about me. And no matter what I did, someone would have something to say about it. So as you begin to grow your fire and you prepare for this blowback, there are really two primary emotions. They're called extinguishers in my book that pose the greatest threat to your fire. And I'm sure you know what those are: guilt and shame. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong. Guilt can be productive if it comes from an internal place, right? It might be a helpful signal that you somehow strayed from your values and is an invitation to course correct. Shame, however, is corrosive. It disconnects you from your worth, and it convinces you that your desires, your voice, your boundaries are bad. So then when that blowback comes, it fans those feelings of guilt and shame. And so I want you to ask yourself these three questions when you start to experience blowback. Does this reaction reflect my values or someone else's expectations? What am I afraid this criticism says about me? And is it actually true? And what can I do to be kind to myself through this blowback? So you will endure many periods of blowback, and it will require you to realign your desires, your values, and your abilities many times throughout your life, right? But it is really that cycle that makes living on fire so powerful. When you live on fire, you continue to choose yourself, your desires, and your aliveness over and over again, even when it would be easier not to. And I cannot think of a better legacy to leave behind. I think the word legacy engenders these feelings. It's equated sometimes with big, extravagant gifts or accomplishments like a building being named after a wealthy donor or powerful companies. And because of that, women have been dissuaded from pursuing their own legacy and kind of kept out of the conversation. And I really want that to end, because we all deserve to leave a legacy. We should redefine what legacy means to us. It's not about your achievements or your wealth accumulation. It really is about paying attention to what gives your life meaning and giving others permission to do the same. It's living in a way that assures you won't have regrets at the end of your life. In fact, the common deathbed regret among most people is that they didn't live a life that was true to them. And I think because during the first half of our lives, women are so focused on helping and supporting others that we really forget our time is finite. And then we reach midlife and we finally have the wisdom to see that we hold the power to burn it all down and to build new lives that are focused on what we want. So if you take one thing from this discussion or my book, I would really like it to be this: you are allowed, even obligated, to decide how to live your life. And it is never too late to live a life on fire. I think acknowledging the finiteness of our lives is really an important wake-up call, no matter how young or how old you are, because life is short and time is precious. Your time is precious. You deserve to live so that when you get to the end of your life, you know you were fully alive, that you truly burned. and that every time you were given an opportunity to choose between your desires and your obligations, you chose the next fiery thing. And that is a legacy that is worth leaving behind. Your fire may be something in your personal life, like investing more in friendships, getting more serious about your health. Maybe it's a professional goal, like making a risky career pivot or asking for promotion. Maybe it's politically driven, like volunteering, or like me, starting an organization. But no matter what it is, when you give yourself permission to pursue what you desire, you stop asking for approval and you start building a life that is authentically your own. When your life is not dictated by what society says you should be or do, you are living fully, audaciously, and authentically. And that is a radical, even political act. If something sparked inside you today, I don't want you to ignore it. I want you to spend time connecting with that energy. Challenge yourself to get clear about what that spark is trying to communicate to you. And ask yourself, what are my current desires, values, and abilities? Which of those desires burns the brightest? And then imagine what your life might look like if you followed that lead and committed to one audacious step to move toward that life. For more strategies and inspiration to help you live on fire, grab a copy of Fired Up and subscribe to my Substack, Playing with Fire. When you get the book, you'll get exclusive access to Firestarter University, which is a year-long workshop designed to help you ignite and grow your fire. We will have a powerhouse lineup of guest speakers, practical resources, guided worksheets, and accountability groups that will support you every step of the way. Living on fire is not a single act, but a lifelong practice you'll embark on with a community of other like-minded women. Thank you so much for joining me in this Maker's Masters class. We will see you soon.